how do you attract that one person, right?
Yeah.
I want to make sure to, like, every person you meet, provide them with tons of value without
I love that.
expecting anything in return.
Yeah.
And this is the big difference, right? Because the people who give the most, that's where the energy changes.
Yeah.
And when you just give, I can tell you that one person that you've been calling in to support you, to help you, will show up. But it will be completely unexpected. It will
love
not
that.
be the person that you think it might be.
Well, Fabi, you are the first guest I brought back for round 2.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty
excited.
excited for this moment. Yeah, here in Austin, and we're gonna do this live in person.
Yes. I'm
And
very
for
excited.
the listeners out there, my brand has shifted a bit recently into live a life of wonder with Kev. And I look back on the moments in my life where, in order for some of those magical moments happen, what are some of the genesis? What are some of the pretexts for that to happen? And one of that magical ingredient is I've been fortunate to always have people that believed in me. I think whether it's parents growing up, mentors, and one of the reasons why I invited you to be here for round 2, you've always been someone who's believed in me. You just have this magical ingredient, believing in people, and it's so crucial.
Yeah.
Like, we don't think about it. It's like, whether we're like competing for something or going towards a job interview, it's just having somebody that supports you. Hey, you got this. It makes all the difference in the world versus the negative self-talk we used to have in ourselves. So welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Of course. I'm so excited to be here, Kevin.
Absolutely. So just for the context for folks is a little bit backstory between Fabi and I. I met her at Summer Greatness, I want to say years ago. And we
Years, yeah.
yeah, barely connected. It was just walking. I think I met her going through like a jaywalk or like across the street or something like that.
Yeah, we were running to the next location.
Yeah, it was just super brief. And somehow I got her on Instagram. We connected via Instagram. Not sure how that happened. And we didn't talk for years. Like, I think like 3 years or so. And then when I started this podcast journey, as you all know, I started like, okay, who would be good on a podcast? And then I saw her business absolutely blowing up. She used to do helping out people out with side hustle, people that's doing exceptionally well. And I DM'd her, just a blue random DM, don't know anything about her at this time. And hey, can we be friends? Can I invite you on my podcast? What are the possibilities? And you said yes.
Yes.
You said yes. And then that's how we became friends. And since then, you've been really more of like a sister in my life.
No.
Not only just on the podcast side, but also someone who's really believed in me in all the ventures I embark on. Whether it's just working towards a personal passion project and now serving a greater purpose, helping others live a life full of possibilities.
Yeah.
So how do you do it, Fabi? Like,
How do I do it?
yeah, like what's the magic there?
I mean, I had other people who did the same thing for me because otherwise I wouldn't be where I am today. And I think when I'm looking back, I remember when you told me about, I have a new direction for my podcast.
Yes.
And it's, the wonder aspect of it. And like having that one person in your life that makes all the difference, right? And it's sometimes like the most random person. Like literally we met while we were walking from one event location to the other.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And I think I had really amazing people in my life where I wasn't even thinking that they would have such a big impact on my life. For instance, like when I worked at Porsche, I used to be an industrial engineer and I worked in the automotive industry.
Yeah.
And I was interning. And I remember literally last week of my internship, my boss pulled me aside and he was like, I heard you got an offer from us. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, if I were you, I wouldn't take it. And I remember back, I was like, what? I worked with him for 5 months, 6 months at that point. And he literally was like, you have so much to give to the world. Like, you're a raw diamond. And this is not the right time to be here right now.
Wow.
And that, selfishness, that really, just changed everything for me, right?
Yeah.
That was the first person, I think, in my life that really stood up for me and said, don't do what society wants you to do, right? Because everyone was like, oh my goodness, yeah, you should absolutely work for Porsche. But he was like, no, you shouldn't. And that, I'm still forever grateful. And the funniest part is, I haven't met him ever since, right? And this was, I don't know, 15, 16 years ago, right? A long time ago.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think that had such a profound impact in my life that I was always like, anyone can change your life if you allow it, right? If you're open to it and if you listen, because I could have also not listened and be like, he says I shouldn't do it, but I'm just going to do it.
Yeah. So I think on that note, and I think what you said right here is so powerful. He did the right thing, not just what's right for himself, for his department, for a company, because you're probably going to add to his bottom line or the company's bottom line if you took that.
Probably,
it would be a win.
Yeah.
But he did the right thing for you versus just what's right for the company's bottom line, which unfortunately that's what a lot of people think about.
Exactly.
So from a person, I think we're always being influenced by so many people. And sometimes when we talk about believing in someone, doing what's right for them, how do people discern from like 2 to 3 different voices? It's like, hey, you should do this. You shouldn't do that. To say what's the right voice. I'm a man of faith. I'm just like I lean towards God, but I'm curious from your perspective, like how that happens.
It's really interesting. I think if you haven't experienced wonder yourself, it's very hard, right? To be open to feeling it. I feel it in my body. Another way to say this, and like I didn't even like believe in the universe and all this when I was younger, right? And I remember I bought a one-way ticket to Australia. Like right after college.
Oh my God. I spent a month there. I loved it.
Know. Yeah. And again, speaking of the wonder of one, right?
Yeah.
Next to me, I had a woman who was probably in her 50s. And she tells me this like insane story how she hasn't been traveling for like over 10 years because her daughter literally had an accident right before she wanted to study abroad in Europe. And she's been taking care of her over the 10, 11 years.
Sure.
And she like literally looked me in the eyes and he's like, your life is now. Live every moment as if it were the last. You're going to Australia, do whatever you can to experience 1000%. Australia. And in that moment, like I felt it like in my body. And this was like a complete stranger, right? I could have been like, whatever, right? But also story is important, context, right? Like if you want to be that person for someone, right? You got to be listening to them and you got to inspire them. Yeah. And I think that is also another thing to just think about that. And I think about this every day, right? I think every day when I wake up, like I'm thanking God that I'm here on this planet, right? Yeah. And that every day could be the last. And instead of like, I always say instead of like collecting bullet points on your resume, collect life memories, right? With the people who you care about. And if you just think about going around in the world and inspiring others, and be that person that changes their trajectory, that is just like, that's what life is about, right? And like we're like such a great example there too. And I heard that you also had a really great impact on someone recently, so maybe you want to tell that story.
I know. Well, you guys will share that in my reels. It's all the wonders that I've been experienced. But I wanted touch base on what you said about Australia, like live in the moment, because I had a bad time of my life in Australia, absolutely. And then speaking of which, I'll tell 2 quick stories. One, when I was in South Korea just very recently, this was actually October, I was climbing those volcano and it was like a 12 hours hike. It was just so intense. But as I was hiking it, to your point, I didn't see any 70-year-olds climbing that.
Yep.
And the reality dawned on me, I am so grateful. I can absorb this all in. I'm doing this while I'm young.
Yes.
Because there will come a day for all of us, all of you guys listening out there. You're going to see a volcano. You're going to see something. You want to conquer that. You want to go on that venture. Your body's going to say, oh, back pain, can't do it. Oh, my knee pain, can't do it anymore. True. So you kind of have to do this while you're able. And maybe you talk about wonder. When I was in Australia, I met this gal getting a dumpling.
Okay.
And I was standing right behind her. She was getting dumpling, and then we just made a connection there. She's like, oh, this place gotta be good. My phone wasn't working. I saw a big line. And then when I was eating food together, she told me how she was going to school there. And that kind of turned into like a friendship day outing right after that. And it started raining as we're walking on the beach. And I happen to have one umbrella. And those really cheap ones you get in a night market for like $5. That was an umbrella. So I popped open an umbrella. And then as I'm popping it, one of the gels like ripped through the net. So the the water's kind of coming down in front of us, but it was kind of cute. We're huddling under this one umbrella. It was such kind of romantic moment, just walking by the beach and just seeing this drip of water constantly in front of your face. So I'll never forget that. You talk about like being the wonder in those moments, just fully prepare for the unexpected.
Yeah. And being open. And the other thing too, I really want to hone in on this because I recently read a book that's really phenomenal that really changed my view about age, about health, about time, which is called Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. And that's all about, right, like you, like between 20 and 40, you can do so many more things, right? Like you can like go to Australia and like, you know, have a dumpling. But at some point, you know, you might have kids and all of this and like you will have responsibilities and then also health will decline over, you know, years. And it's very important like to know that you should not wait until you like retire to live your life, because just do you want to go to like Paris like in a like, you know, in a walker? Like no, you don't. And I think it's very key coming back to like the wonders, right? Like you will have wonders even when you're older, but it's going to be a lot harder to make that connection than it is now. So I think just like proactively really creating these memories and creating to inspire others proactively is really the key. I mean, like literally every time I get a coffee, I talk to the person, right? And I ask like just one simple question, right? Like while they're like, you know, putting in like how much I owe them, right? I'm like, so what's something on your bullet list that you haven't done?
Yes.
Very simple question, but I kid you not. I even enrolled in a barista to literally go and move to the Dominican Republic.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and he's like, you know, I've been wanting to do this, and I was like, your life is now, right? And so I never see him again. Maybe he will watch this interview at one point, right? But like, you
probably enjoy margaritas somewhere in the Dominican
But he
Republic.
will, you know, tell his kids one day, like, oh, there was this one woman who walked into the coffee shop, and she made this happen. And I mean, that is a life worth living.
Yes, 1,000%. And I'm wondering, like, do you have any stories of wonder that you like to share? Maybe one that's just like, oh, this was a magical moment.
Yes. I have a lot of stories to tell about wonder, right? But I think for me, especially, I think we're talking a little bit about being open when it comes to the wonder and the experience. And I think for a long, long time in my life, like, even though I had my boss, Philip, who was, like, really, you know, believing in me, I was still not believing in myself. Right? And so this is also like very tricky. Because if you don't believe in yourself and you don't trust yourself, it's going to be very hard to be open for wonder.
That's right.
And I do believe now, because of this one story, that energy attracts energy. Yeah. And I think I had very blocked energy, and I had a lot of like blocked people. And this goes for the people who are listening right now who are like, if I look around, you know, the people around me, like, it's not the energy that I want in my life, right? But it is that you are the energy. And so the story that I want to tell is when I started my entrepreneurship journey, I always say entrepreneurship is the best personal development course that you can take because your childhood trauma, all of the stuff will come up. And it came up big time for me. My dad left when I was 4 years old, and I haven't seen him ever since. And so I never really healed that part. So I went to California. There's a process called Hoffman, which Katy Perry and Justin Bieber went through. And you literally turn in your phone, and for 7 days you just are with yourself and with your trauma, and you work through it. And it's like, it's very intense. And I will never forget, we like went through like a lot of intensity one day. And then I walked outside, and we were supposed to be silent for the rest of the night. And the sun was setting, and there was this like beautiful hill and a fallen tree. And I was like, you know, why don't I just sit there? You know, I usually never do this, and just like be in nature and just enjoy the sunset all by myself, quietly, without listening to a podcast, right? Because my monkey brain always wants to do something. So as I was sitting there, I just feel like deep inner peace. And I feel like all the resentment that I had inside of me just like was lifted. And then this thought comes to me, and I'm like, you know what? I forgive you, my mom, right? And I forgive my dad. And I feel this peace, and then in the background, I hear like, meh, meh. And I was like, what the heck is this?
Yeah, so it's like alien pack. Where did that come from?
And I turn around and they're like, I kid you not,
Yeah.
the sheep apparently
Whoa.
escaped. And they like went over the fence, they tore it down, and they like were all running toward me.
Oh
and
my
they
gosh.
circled me, like
Yeah.
literally. And I was like at a kind of like a cliff, right? So I couldn't like really escape. And I was just like sitting there smiling. I was like, what the heck is going on, right? And I like couldn't understand it.
Yeah.
And then like I was just like closing my eyes, and then I felt something really warm on my right knee, and I look back down and I see this like sheep just resting its head like on my knee for like just a split second, not long, but just look at me in the eyes as if it's like, you're okay now. And that was just like so crazy for me. And again, I've never experienced something like a wonder like this before.
Sure.
And I remember the next day, because we're allowed to speak,
Yeah.
I go to my coach and I was like, Regina, like, what the heck? Like, this is so wild. Like, why did this happen?
Didn't happen to anybody else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she was like, because your energy changed and you called in to lead. And I was just like, what?
Yeah.
So when I'm telling this story too, it's like if you've been feeling like stuck, right? You're listening to this podcast and you're like, I want to attract wonder. I want to have like people who like really believe in me. Then make sure that you do the inner work.
Yeah.
Like you gotta do the inner work.
1000%.
Yeah, because if it's all the energy stuck inside of you, you will attract the wrong people in your life.
100%. And sometimes we're oblivious to it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're just so stuck in the routine. And this is like the message we live the life, and you guys can see, is we spend so much of our life, for me, a decade, for you, probably longer than that, just living in the corporate routine.
Yes.
And part of it, our job, we still have our day jobs, but we're doing this passion project to make a difference in the world. So it is doable to kind of shift some of your energy to outside that to make a difference. I'm wondering, for people who are in that routine, what's a starting step? Because we obviously, when we say, hey, take 7 days off to do this retreat, for a lot of people, that's not doable yet. It will be at some point.
Yeah.
Is it to go to like a seminar, personal development seminar like what we did? That seems to be like a good starting point. What are your thoughts on that?
So just to get into the habit and like, you know, I would say always pay yourself first, right? What that means is when you wake up in the morning, don't check your work email or your work site, right? Like literally do something for yourself. Sit there. Envision your future, right? Like journal, go outside in nature, like do something to pay yourself first, or even do, you know, I'm a side hustle coach on the side too, right? So I'm like, do something that brings you closer to freedom first thing in the morning before you hop onto any Zoom call. And the other thing too is you mentioned like, oh, some people might not have the ability to you know, go on like a retreat for like 7 days. Totally get it. Then manage your 9 to 5 so it doesn't manage you. That is very key. And as an entrepreneur too, like you can get so much more efficient in terms of your time and get more results. It is not about like how many hours you work, right? It's about like really moving the needle in terms of results and value. And so, and that's the same thing for you, right? It doesn't matter that you go like for 7 days on a retreat. If you do the work every single day for half an hour because you're paying yourself first, it's going to go a long way.
Absolutely. And it's so key, even though this is a podcast, so key to what Fabi says, sometimes just to detox yourself from all the noise, all the influence. Right now, we're recording this is right before election. I know you guys are probably getting spammed by all those text messages and whatnot. When you're able to just turn your phone off. When I did that when I was in Korea. Oh, couldn't get any American like it. You'll be amazed how far like you discover yourself when you're alone in your thoughts for extended amount of time. The journaling, the healing process, the self-understanding, and then your childlike self begins to surface. You begin like finding joy. It's like, I like doing this. This is fun. I don't like that. I like exploring it. So you just begin learning more about yourself in those moments.
I love that you do that. And I want to also hone in on this, right? Because pay attention to when you use your phone.
Yeah.
Right? Are you bored? Are you about to do something really challenging? Are you then like getting that dopamine hit and that's why you're reaching to the phone? I kid you not, what I do is I put my phone into my husband's car that is in the garage and lock it and then like leave it there for the day.
Nice.
Yeah, because it's all about, I think Atomic Habits, the book, talks
yeah.
about it. You're making it more difficult, right?
Right.
And so that way, whenever I'm like working on something that is uncomfortable, where like childhood trauma comes up or something, right?
Yeah.
Then I don't have to like be like, oh, okay, now it's phone time, right?
Yeah,
And
don't
it's
get
like it's
distracted.
subconsciously already.
Yeah.
So I love that you did like your
Yeah.
South Korea trip without it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to hone in on touch base on like I've been very fortunate to have people like you in my life. But when people once have the right influence and someone that believes in them, maybe they're surrounded by people that not so believe in them, that are very judgmental, very critical, just broken families.
Yeah.
How do they find out one person that say, "Hey, you can do this. You're capable." You know what? The reality is there are 9 good reasons why you shouldn't do it, but I see one reason you should do it, and you should bet on yourself, even though it's like a 5-10% chance of succeeding.
Yeah.
How do they find that person?
I mean, it's a good question, right? So
Yeah.
what I said already is like really making sure that you're open for it, right? Because if you're not open to calling someone's advice in,
Yeah.
you're not going to get it, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to receive it from the universe. So that's one. I think the other piece too is like surround yourself, right?
Yeah.
With the right people. Because it's like, right, the saying, you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with the most, right?
Absolutely.
So if you're like talk all the time to your family and that's very negative, like it's very hard to get out of there, right? Like it's a lot about boundaries, like making sure that the
Yeah.
negative impact gets like managed, right? And then really focusing on, okay, maybe are there any communities I can maybe I'm gonna move to a new city, right? Because I heard that you might move to a new city.
That's it. That's it. I'm moving to Austin, so
Yeah.
for folks that are
So,
listening
but like, I
out
mean,
there, yeah.
why are you moving to Austin?
For the connection,
Exactly.
for the possibilities of
Yeah.
working with more people in this realm,
Yeah.
so I can connect more. It's a work on my passion project.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? Like that's where it really comes down to, because if you're stuck somewhere where you feel like, you don't have the right people there,
Totally.
get out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it takes courage to do that.
It does. And sometimes it's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable. I don't know how many times after hearing our initial conversation, could be because you always give me stretch assignment. At first, I'm just like, I don't know if I want to do this, feel uncomfortable. But then I'll come back to it a few days, whether you sign me on this workshop in Austin that was a pretty hefty commitment. But I'm like, give me 48 hours. Like, okay, I'm going to do it. Damn it. Okay, here we go. Let's do it. So it's sometimes like this. You can, for the folks that are listening out, it's okay to feel a sense of discomfort, but then have that discernment and ask yourself, okay, is this a direction you want to be stretched?
Yeah.
Has that person achieved or a degree? It doesn't have to be everything you're looking for, but are they further along than you are in that area? If they are, it's probably a good indicator that you might take hints on what they're doing, and maybe not all of it, but at least certainly elements of it.
Absolutely. And another thing too is how do you attract that one person, right?
Yeah.
I want to make sure to like every person you meet, provide them with tons of value without
I love that.
expecting anything in return.
Yeah.
And this is the big difference, right? Because the people who give the most, that's where the energy changes.
Yeah.
And when you just give, I can tell you that one person that you've been calling in to support you, to help you, will show up. But it will be completely unexpected. It will not be the person that you think it might be.
I love that, and I want to touch base on the law of reciprocity, which is kind of what you're saying, because I think a lot of times when people first hearing this, their initial trauma, in my experience, has been, well, I gave so much to this person in a relationship, and that person broke me. That's probably a lot of you guys are listening out there. That's probably the thing that's coming to mind. But what Fabi's talking about is if you really give to everybody and really just expect nothing in return, and the right person will kind of show up in your life in an unexpected way. Can you maybe elaborate further on that? Maybe examples, or how should I have a mindset about that? Yeah.
I mean, so a year ago. Wow.
Okay.
It feels like years ago. I was stuck in my business. I was like, okay, I want to scale to the next level, but like something's off. Like, I don't know what it is.
Okay.
Like, and I've done, Hoffman process. I've done this and this. And like, I want something to change, right?
Sure.
I need a sign, like what's off. And so, and this is like such a funny of coincidences. So then I just like was like, okay, maybe my energy's off. So I just like started to like really give, right, to the people around me. I gave a lot of coaching sessions for free too, just to support, right?
Yeah.
And thought like, okay, this might change my energy. So then I went to the Summit of Greatness again.
Yes,
right?
yes,
And there
yes.
was a workshop with Chris Lee.
Yeah.
And Chris Lee was like, oh, we have this abundance and prosperity workshop in Austin.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, they have a good deal. And I was like, it's in Austin. I'm free that weekend. I might as well just go.
Yeah.
And so then I went to the training.
Yeah.
And I will never forget, like, I mean, there were like 30, 40 people in the room, but it was very a split kind of energy. So there was one part, like, you could just tell, like, they were like high, right? Like, I was like, they're high on life, right? They were like very energetic. And I was just like, I want that. Like, what's going on? Like, what do they all have in common? And so then I, you know, talked to them and they're like, oh, we did this like leadership program, right? And I was like, okay, I'm just going to do that, right? And so, and then this like led me to like so many different opportunities along the way, but I was just following the flow.
Yeah.
And that helped me then, you know, break through my YouTube channel, right? And all of the different things. And so it's funny that the help that you might want and where you expect it to come from will actually not come from that part. It will come from a very different person that you might have not even met yet.
Totally.
So
Totally. And it's so crazy how strangers sometimes just give you like a piece of advice.
Yeah.
Or a breakthrough that you very much desperately need. And that's kind of happened to me in South Korea, you know, when that gal tell me, oh, my experience of you, it's like a whole new world. And I realized, you know what, I need to add music in my repertoire and what I'm doing in the future. So
I love that.
Yeah, more to come on that in the future, guys.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, right? I mean, I had pre-stage of cervical cancer, right? And so like that was for me like the turning point where I was like, oh my goodness, if I were to die this year, what would I have contributed to the world? And I think about death a lot. And actually, the more I learn about really successful people, they think of death a lot too, right?
Sure.
Because it's the urgency, right? Because we don't know how much time we have.
Right.
And I think it's just so key to really think about what do you want your funeral to look like? And I think it's the book, the 7
Habits of Highly Effective People.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And envisioning your funeral and thinking about like what do you want on your gravestone to be, right? And I just like love because you said like, oh, you opened up a new world.
Yeah.
And just think about like Kevin opened up a new world. I mean, that is a life worth living.
Help people just see for their remaining time on this earth. It's like, how can they live their life to the absolute fullest?
Yes.
Full of joy, wonder, and possibilities. Because at the end of the day, I think to your point, we're 70s, 80s, the amount, all of a sudden the money of a bank account don't really matter anymore. The number of real estate holding doesn't really matter. It's all about how you loved others, how others loved you. And those key moments you'll look back, you remember, because even I think to what you said, I look back 10, 20 years, it's those key defining moments, those flashback moments for you, those moments when she rested their head on your lap. You're gonna remember that for the rest of your life.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's how do we get more of those moments?
Yeah.
Is there anything else I should ask you on like a subject of like live a life of wonder and possibility I haven't touched base on it yet that you like to share with the audience?
Let me think. I mean, we talked a lot about being open, resolving like the childhood trauma to change your energy, to just, give without expecting anything in return, to think of wonder coming from so many different places, right, that you might not even expect. Sure. So I feel like we summarized it.
Awesome. Well, hey, Fabi, thank you so much for being here on this session, and I can't wait for our next conversation.
Same.
Yeah.